Beecher Stowe was an author and abolitionist who advocated against slavery. She wrote the book Uncle Tom's Cabin. This book told millions what life was like for American slaves. In her book, Harriet Beecher Stowe told of the emotional impact of slavery on families and children. Harriet Beecher Stowe was invited to the White House to meet with President Abraham Lincoln. Harriet Beecher Stowe's life and writing persuaded many people to advocate with her for the abolishment of slavery. She was a leader of courage, bravery, determination, honesty, and intelligence. She helped pave the path to freedom. Never give up, for that is just the place and time that the tide will turn, says Harriet Beecher Stowe, and she definitely practiced what she preached. As a woman in the 1800s, they were considered second-class citizens, almost minorities, which means they weren't allowed to stand up for what they believed in, and in this case, that was the abolishment of slavery. This is why you probably wouldn't expect that a certain lady wrote over 20 books in her lifetime, and you most certainly wouldn't expect a reaction like this when that woman dies. New York Times calls it one of the closing leaves in an era of our century. Now I would have to agree, wouldn't you? 10 years after Harriet writes her life-changing book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, she meets Abraham Lincoln, who says, "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that made this great war," upon seeing her. He was referring to Harriet's book, in which she portrays her perspective on slavery and the basic injustice of it. But the beginning of our story is all the way back in 1811. Harriet Elizabeth Beecher was one of 13 children born to Lyman and Roxana Beecher. Roxana Beecher died when Harriet was only 5 years old. Lyman, being a religious leader, influenced all of his children to believe in God and to advocate for things they were brought up to believe right. This was one of Roxana's few death wishes. This is why she advocated so strongly for anti-slavery and the injustice of it. She was sent to her grandmother's house with her Aunt Harriet later in life. At 13, she attended school run by her older sister. It was one of the few schools that taught girls more than what we call home economics now. At the time, women weren't allowed to keep their wages, sign a contract, be involved in politics, or advised to get a sufficient education as well as own property and vote. Later in life, she joins the Semicolon Club and meets Calvin Ellis Stowe. They fall in love and are married. At this time, Harriet is 25. Now, at 41, she has much more experience in life, including witnessing a slave trade, losing one of her 7 children to cholera, writing 5 to 8 adult books, and published Uncle Tom's Cabin. In order to do this, she touched the reader's emotional perspective and how they thought. By changing their perspective on the subject, she went with her husband to the White House, and they met Abraham Lincoln 10 years after the publishing of her book. Harriet Beecher Stowe died of old age and her frail being. She had constantly needed a nurse with her because of her frailness. By her side were her son, the Reverend Charles Edward Stowe of Simsbury, her 2 daughters, Eliza and Harriet, her sister, Mrs. Isabella Beecher Hooker, and her husband, John Hooker, Dr. Edward B. Hooker, her nephew, which was also her medical attendant, and other relatives. Jane Tompkins says that death is not the defeat, but victory. It brings an access of power, not a loss of it. It is not only the crowning of achievement in life, it is life and Stowe's entire presentation of Little Eva, a character that dies in Uncle Tom's Cabin, who is the main character Tom's best friend, is designed to dramatize this fact. Not only does Eva show this, but Harriet herself does too. Without her, people in the 1800s would not have viewed her side of the argument. They wouldn't have followed her lead, and we wouldn't have her legacy if she hadn't written her book and changed many people's opinions about the act of slavery. Harriet believed that slavery was wrong because it treated blacks unfairly, and they weren't given an equal chance to be a good person. The public accepted her, although many opposers thought that what she was doing was not part of an everyday activity or what happened on a normal basis. She didn't get many people's votes at first, but afterwards she gained millions of people's trust, heart, viewpoints, and support. She slowly trudged her way through the 1800s. She showed people that slavery was wrong and meant to be abolished, and advocating for slaves who couldn't help themselves because they were forced to do work with little pay and excruciating temperatures and conditions. As a Caucasian woman, she might have made some people angry because of the change. It wasn't normal for a Caucasian person to be advocating so loudly and so strongly for people of a different race. These people may have influenced others and started a chain reaction. Despite this possibility, she still continued and succeeded in making her voice heard and was one of the people to end slavery in America. I think Harriet Beecher Stowe has helped society because she didn't shy away from the problems of America. She helped and contributed by telling her fellow people what was right and what was wrong. She also guided them on the right path as to stopping slavery and creating a better nation. Without Harriet Beecher Stowe, things would be different today because there would not be equality. Now the question is, will you use her legacy to start your own?